Hello, welcome to another uh, thing. It's gonna be a ZvZ between me and some other guy called Karama that I played just now. Well, I didn't play him just now. I played him like a game before now, but it's a ZvZ, and I want to do this one because it wasn't a standard ZvZ. It was like a Mutas battle, and I don't really consider that to be standard. What standard is usually like infestors or roaches, and that sort of roach hydra infestor sort of thing. But this time around, it's going to be a ZvZ, and it's going to be a Muta fighting ZvZ, and I lose this one, and it's kind of odd because I played this guy the game before this game, and I won it, and it was a standard one. It's a weird game, but this one was a little bit weird to me because I thought we were at even heading. If not, I thought I was maybe a little bit ahead, but I actually wasn't, so it was kind of weird. So, I'm going to speed the replay up a bit. In Antigua Shipyard, if you scout your overlord and you miss-scout the first time, and you know that he scouted you first and he didn't miss-scout, which happens here, then you know that you can send your overlord in and it will be relatively safe because we both had this relatively same pull timing, and our queens aren't close to being out yet. Maybe it would be out if they did like a 10 pull and then they opted for a queen or something, but if you see that, then you would gladly sacrifice your overlord to know that a 10 pull is coming your way. Anyways, the opening is actually the same from both players. And yeah, so I'm just going to speed this up. And I noticed that he takes his second gas actually pretty early. As soon as he starts his layer, he takes his second gas. And this is something that's really, really standard with the Muta play. I don't do this, even though I knew I was going for Mutas, because the whole problem with doing this is that if you get hit by like a Roach Ling Bane bust or any of the variation of the aforementioned units, then you're going to pretty much die unless you have a shit ton of spine crawlers. And when you do stuff like that and your opponent decides not to commit, or he commits in an intelligent manner, you're not going to be able to have the minerals to adeptly get yourself ahead against your opponent. Like, when I say this is because they get a really early gas and they just start banking this gas like really, really early. And all this gas is used towards mutas. So until that spire actually pops, they're not going to be able to use that gas. So the reason why I said I thought I was ahead, oh, I guess I wasn't. I don't know, because I macroed really well, I think. I made the drones a lot earlier than he did. And that's because he got the second earlier gas, and that's just also because he didn't really, he wasn't really, spamming the drone button like I did, so that's why I had a really good feeling. But one of the big mistakes I found watching this replay beforehand was, as soon as these gases finished, you have to mine them. And even though, like, I was later in mining the gases, like, he mined already, like, 25 out of this one, another 20, before I started saturating these. And that's really, really big. That's like one muta. If you fucking calculate it somehow. But you'll see that his spire went down and my spire went down pretty much the same time. His is like 100 health more than mine, but you gotta remember that if you spawn your mutas and you decide to go aggressive with them, and say you straggle them in, even though you're quicker, then by the time you reach my base, my mutas are gonna come out because they're not that much delayed. And I just poke around with some links. And already, I think that he spent gas on 3 Banes. I didn't spend any gas. I had 1 Ling that I was going to turn to a Bane later. But I was going to get a +1 carapace. Now, I don't know. I'm experimenting with Muta versus Muta. I didn't really dwell into Mutas early on. But getting the +1 carapace enables that your Lings to be able to tank the Bane shot. Then why is this important and be remaining with 1 health. And why is this important for Muta versus Mutas? Because a lot of times when you fight Muta versus Muta, it's not only Muta versus Muta, it's like Mutaling versus Muta. But the whole, or Mutaling versus like Banes in there if there's some. But the whole reason is that the glaive that comes from Mutas will splash onto either any unit like in its vicinity, and most times it's going to be Mutas. But if you have Lings there, then the Lings will have a chance to absorb some of that damage, giving you a slighter edge in Muta versus Muta. This is relatively common knowledge. A lot of people said this before. You can find this on Reddit, StarCraft, and whatever. But if I can get tank more shots, like +1 armor for my, like, you know how people always say like, oh, +1 armor or +1 carapace on your Mutas, that's going to be really big. So if you get +1 carapace on your Lings, and that's going to block a glaive damage, that's a lot big too. That's very big too. And then your Lings can be able to kill, because in Muta battles, it's not just Mutas and Lings, the Mutas that kill all the buildings necessarily. You can have your Lings, which actually technically do a higher DPS against stuff like buildings. So you really just want to look out. It's not only just Muta versus Muta. It's Lings and Mutas, which decide how the game and how the economy and all the bases are played. So right now he's already banking like almost 250 gas more than me, or he is 250 gas more than me. And he gets his 3rd base actually really, really later. And another big mistake was I didn't mind these gas. Like, in Muta vs. Muta, you gotta get your 3rd gases as soon as possible. And like, a gas geyser takes, I think, 30 seconds to build. Yeah, 30 seconds, so I should have 2 drones here by 70 out of 100 on this. Like, I should have 2 drones building extractors 4 seconds ago. And then as soon as this hatch finishes and the gas finishes, I start mining them. And I start getting the gas that I need to win against this fight. But obviously the Lings, micro, and all this stuff is really distracting. Oh shit, I'm like crazy right here. But you just gotta remember that stuff. So as soon as you get a higher gas income than your opponent, you can start outproducing Mutas and stuff like that. And so right now he spent like 3 banelings of gas, and I only spent 1 gain of gas, but I spent a lot on this carapace upgrade. And I don't know, I'm not exactly sure if it's worth it or not. So while this is going on, I see that he has Mutas. I didn't actually scout him, I just assumed that he was going Mutas because I saw he was committing so hard with these Lings and Banes against me. It wasn't just going to be, you know, roaches, because that'd be weird. And if it was roaches, my Mutas would just blind counter it anyways, so. Yep. So doing this, I see that he has 8 Mutas here, and I actually have. And I did a really cute move where, since they usually hotkey their eggs, so they're straggling Mutas in, I start picking off a bit. So I pick off 1 Muta here, and I think I pick off a 2nd one here, which I thought was really, really big for me, getting so much damage on this Muta and killing it. And like all of a sudden, the unit tabs, I'm ahead in Mutas by 1. And he's making 3 more, but I'm also making 2 more. So he gets an infestation pit, and he decides to cancel it because he knows that it's too late. While he gets infestors, he's just gonna lose out on the Muta fight, and his 3rd's gonna be dead, and it doesn't matter. But even then, even though my 3rd is so far ahead of his, he gets his gas earlier than mine. And I do eventually start putting my gas down, but it's just way too late. And I was actually whoa, this is just fucking crazy. Wow, I'm not watching. I'm not watching, he's not watching, you know, it's very hectic, Muta versus Muta. But I was definitely feeling very comfortable, even though I wasn't supposed to. It was like a false sense of Muta security, mutarity. I tried to make a pun, it didn't work. So getting these overlords is usually you have your overlords spread out, and usually just if you scout the Mutas, then you can pull them back. But if you don't, then you're not going to be able to pull them back, and it would be really ill-advised to get the overlord speed upgrade, because that costs 100 gas, and you really can't afford it in something like Muta versus Mutas. So he starts mining gas, and I start mining gas too, but my gas is a bit later than his. And all of a sudden, those 2 Mutas that I picked off earlier, which I thought gave me a huge lead, and now we're just even now. but I do have a +1 carapace upgrade. And I just want to keep going in the replay, and this is like a very volatile position to be in, because obviously everyone's just wanting to make mutas, but the question is, what else can you do? Do you keep making lings? Because I technically have 45 drones and he has 52, but I have sort of spread them out better, or I should have anyways. I thought I did. I do later in the game, but do you make drones or do you make lings? Because if you make more lings, then you decide to be more aggressive. Or do you make banes because you want banes to clear up the lings, so then your mutas won't be able to do that glaive damage, or their mutas won't be able to do that glaive damage. And I decide not to make any banes, and I don't know how that actually fares out. But in Muta vs Muta, you also have to be very, very meticulous on scouting for extra bases. So I sent a link to each one, and this one died, I think, so I sent this one over. But because usually the overlords all die and stuff, so you can't really do any scouting with your mutas or your units to see if they're expanding with your overlords. I mean, God, I'm stuttering again. So in this time we sort of have the same muta count, and he gets a bit more than me, but I decide to engage here, and this is actually very bad, as I have 6 more mutas about to pop. And like, this is like another big mistake. Like, I could have totally been on even footing, maybe even more ahead. If I waited for those 6 meters, I'd have 30 and he'd have 28, and we both have +1 carapace. And I had a lot more lings than he had, I think. Yeah, I had 52 at 39, but he had 4 banes and I only had 2, and my 2 banes were like over here. So the way to correct this is to see that any eggs that are rallying out, like if you have your hotkey for your mutas selected, you'll have all your mutas, and then you'll also have the eggs, and then you'll see the lines, like the web, the rally point lines, which sort of like spin out like a web. And if you have a lot of those, and you can count those individually, if you have a lot of those, then you should wait until those come out and then engage. But I decided to engage here. I don't have no idea why, just because I honestly have no idea why. Maybe I should have just poked around here. I broke these rocks down. I could have definitely fought here. But this is the fight I want to see. Is that he had banes, so even though my lings were, I pulled them back slightly, and I definitely lose the muta fight because I just don't have. I might have even mutas here, but the mutas are like over here, so it's definitely a bad thing. And he got some he got some energy on his queens because his injects weren't very good. Mine are slightly lower. Well, they're a lot lower actually in energy. And I sort of lose the muta fight here. And I lose the ling fight because I lost the muta fight. So in the end, it's really because I made a couple mistakes. I really need to be really tedious on mining the gases as soon as I place them. And if I get an earlier third, is that when your hatchery is 70 out of 100, you should have the drones mining gas. So I would advise not to be late. Start sending your drones to your third at like when your hatchery is like 50 to 60 out of 100 seconds on its progress for its completion. So then you can get those gases down as soon as you can and start mining them. And I also think that in Muta versus Muta, unless you know that they have a really big weakness, before you get the mutas up, or before whatever, I would advise going more defensive to get more drones out. And it's okay to oversaturate your bases, maybe get a couple of spore crawlers and stuff, because as soon as the muta fights start and all the units come out and start fighting, it's really hard to really establish more economy. So if you can anyway get away with getting more drones in your bases, like I have very few drones here because I moved them here. But if there's any way to get more drones into your bases before the mutas and all the lings start without losing your third or without losing anything, then I would totally advise doing that. And but you gotta think about, what does that mean actually? Does that mean since you're making more drones and less lings, do you have to make a couple banes because they have more lings? Maybe you have to do that, but like you gotta measure out what is enough. Maybe like 2 banes, maybe like 4 Banes at maximum, because that's the cost of one Muta. And you don't necessarily have to use the Banes, you just have them there to threaten. And then you could use those Banes to help in the Muta Ling Bane fight, because you saw in that battle his Banes really did a lot of damage. And I think that's sort of it for this. This wasn't really a commentary. This wasn't really a cast of a game, but more of a commentary and really speculating about how Muta versus Muta isn't just Muta versus Muta, and it's not about just if you just get all there is to it, is just get the +1 carapace. No, there's much more than that. You gotta ask yourself, do I get the carapace on Lings? How do I treat the Lings? How do I treat the drones? And if I've so much money, should I make more queens? Should I make a macro hatch? Because more queens can transfuse your mutas, and transfusing mutas means that since queen are just a mineral investment and they don't cost larva, you're sort of getting a gas value return because you are putting more health into your mutas. So you got to really ask yourself that. And thanks for watching if you did. Until